You're an actual pro. Most of us will never get to your level, but everybody wants to become faster. When you think about getting faster, where do you start with a rider?
All right, welcome back to Bespoke Endurance. Today is episode 22 of Recreational Rider to Racer podcast series, where Josh and I are transforming into racers, leveling up on the bike and in life in the midst of busy lives, work, and young families. Hit that subscribe button and follow us along on our journey. You will not be disappointed.
You will not.
All right, so Josh and I are super excited this week. We have a very, very special guest on with us. U.S. Continental Pro for Team Project Echelon Cycling. Today we have Stephen Bassett. Stephen is a lifer biker from Knoxville, Tennessee. He began racing at 9 years old. His racing career highlights include spending a lot of time in Europe racing for the U.S. national team and rally cycling. He's won a few really cool races, such as the Joe Martin. He was the U.S. National Pro Crit champion and taken the KOM jersey at the Arctic Race of Norway. So, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on our podcast tonight.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor. We're super pumped about this. All right, so just tell us right out of the gate, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, how did you get into cycling, racing? You know, when did you actually turn pro? Was it 10 years old? Like, were you you started racing at 9 years old? That's insane. I love that.
Yeah, so when I was 9, my dad was a professor at UT, and he had this student, Jeremy, and I was like, this is the coolest guy in the world. And there was a pretty big Knoxville cyclocross scene at that point. There was this Noxycross race series. So I think it was like 8 races every fall or every winter. So he invited me out to that, and I showed up at the first one, and I didn't even know like a kid was allowed to do it. I didn't even have my bike with me. So then I came back to all the next ones with the bike and did a few years of just that series, and then kind of did the classic like expedited runner to biker trajectory. But I blew up my knee by the time I was in 8th grade. So then I was fully committed to biking from there.
So at what point then how old were you when you turned pro?
So it depends what you define as. Like, so when I was 18, I signed a contract with this Hagens Berman development team. So it's like a U23 team. So I was getting a little money back then. But yeah, it was one of those. There used to be more of these types of teams that was like, really centered on development. So their goal was to get you to a professional team. And then from there, I think I signed my first Continental contract with Jameis in 2016. Did a year on there. So I did a couple of years where it was like that was almost a South American team that raced the American calendar, which was pretty interesting. Huh. A lot of really good South American guys. So that was cool. And then I went to Silber, which was a Canadian team racing the American calendar. So I was the only American ever to be on Silber. So that was a lot of, Quebec guys, a lot of English speaking Canadians. And those were some cool teams for sure.
So 18, when you get your first contract, how long did it take you, I guess before that in the U23 to go from, starting off at the Cat 5 and kind of working your way down to getting the opportunity to be recognized like that?
Yeah. So I think when I was like 14-ish, I started racing juniors on the road. And then typically in America, you would race like a little bit of juniors at nationals. And then you would race category the rest of the time just because there aren't enough juniors around. So I think they were kind enough. They let me skip Cat 5 because I was pretty okay. I was pretty okay at 14. I was not too bad. So I skipped Cat 5, and then I think I did a season in the 4s probably, and then I think a season in the 3s, and then was in the Pro 1-2 race by the time I was, I guess, 16.
Wow. So I'm curious about this because you were at such a young age. Obviously, that was a long time ago, but also tell me about when they were looking at measuring like FTP, things like that. Like, how are they basing that for you when you were that young?
Yeah, so I kind of I'm old enough that I kind of missed a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
So I'd go to some like USA Cycling Talent ID camps, which are like kind of a summer camp for bike racing. And so you'd do a week, and they would have you do a 5-minute test and a 20-minute test. But I think I didn't even have a power meter, so it was a lot more estimated and a lot more race result. It was definitely more results based
Sure.
when I was a junior than potential based like it is now.
So when then was the power meter standard for you then?
I think I didn't have one. I think I had one on the race bike uh, in 2014.
Okay.
But until then, yeah, I didn't. I think I had one for training, but I'll be honest, it didn't really work. It didn't work after
Those older, yeah.
It was pretty bad.
Okay, so one last question, a little bit on the background, because I think it's just really interesting. We showed up to a race in Georgia, and we had young guys in that race. I was surprised. Now, we're new to racing, so it was learning this was interesting. Just how you have some of these really young kids out there racing, and in the category, 4-5, where I was like, wow, some of these kids were really good, like really impressive. But I'm curious, did you when you first lined up for your like very first race? Do you remember that really well?
Oh yeah, it was cyclocross. I think it was super muddy. This might have been my second race, but I just remember I had like these tights that were probably size small, but I was size double extra small, and so they got so muddy that they just like kept falling off. And there was also it was on a trail, like a mountain bike trail, and I had a mountain bike, but the brakes would get clogged up with mud every time. So there was this lady that would wait for me with a stick on the exit of every lap, and she would hand me the stick so I could jam out the mud, and then I would keep going.
No
So
way.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was snowing. It was the whole thing.
It was snowing during your one of your first races, and you
Oh
were
yeah,
wow.
yeah. Especially when I was really small. I have this thing called Raynaud's, which is like a hunter's reflex. So like your hands and feet blanch, or the blood stops going to them when you get cold, as like a defensive mechanism. So especially when you're like, now it's not that big a deal when I'm pretty big and have, a lot of really nice clothes. But when you're 100 pounds even, with maybe not such nice clothes, it was a big problem racing in the winter.
That's funny. I remember the juniors that were in that race. Like, it was a cooler morning start, like 40 degrees, and
Yeah.
everybody's got gilets and gloves, and they've got underwear under their bibs. Like,
Oh, yeah.
one kid was like licking his hand to keep it warm because he didn't have
felt bad.
gloves, and I was like, oh, this
yeah.
team, like,
Yeah.
I felt so bad for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there used to be a kid, and when I was a junior, he loved his skin suit so much, and he didn't want to take it off. So I don't know what the deal was or what his parents compromised with him, but he would in between the races take the skin suit off, put the underwear on to kind of get some separation from the chamois, I guess, and he would put the skin suit back on for another 6 hours until we raced the TT or whatever. It was like you had to take it off.
Oh.
So I don't know why he put it back on, but that's what he did with every race.
Before we go any further, we want to give a huge shout out to Road ID for not only supporting our podcast, but also letting us film right here at their headquarters. If you're a cyclist, runner, or someone who just wants peace of mind while out on the road, Road ID has you covered. Their medical IDs provide crucial info in case of an emergency, and they look great too. Do yourself a favor and check out roadid.com and grab one today. Big thanks to the team at Road ID for their support. Steven, you got a Road ID?
I do.
Nice. It's essential.
Let's
This episode is also brought to you by our sponsor, Chris Carville, the bike lawyer. If you are injured in a bicycle accident, Chris is the guy to call. 20 years legal experience and tens of thousands of miles of training and racing. He's not just a legal pro. He's a cyclist who understands what it means to ride and the risks that come with it. Representing both Ohio and Kentucky injured cyclists, whether you've been in a crash or just want to know your rights on the road, visit KentuckyBikeLawyer.com. I can speak from experience working with Chris when I had my accident. He is top-notch to work with. So once again, that's KentuckyBikeLawyer.com. All right, Josh, you want to take away this first part?
Yeah. Okay. So first question. You're an actual pro. Most of us will never get to your level, but everybody wants to become faster. When you think about getting faster, where do you start with a rider? Is it fitness, skills, mindset?
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it's all the above. So I like to say like bike racing is like 30% fitness, 30% or a third fitness, a third mindset, and a third everything else. So the first two are pretty important. And training's not necessarily that complicated for a lot of people starting. You can do some pretty basic efforts and get pretty good results. I do see a lot of times people who maybe they can do the numbers by themselves and they can do them on the trainer, and then they get in the race scenario and they're a bit overwhelmed because it is a lot of stimulus coming at you. There's a lot of different things happening. And so I think that's probably the most common issue is like, I tightened up and I couldn't perform. And a lot of that too might be, I think a lot of cyclists aren't necessarily the most athletic outside of cycling. Some people are, some people come from other sports, but I think a lot of people are more the exerciser type, where they're really fit and they can produce a lot of power, and then they maybe don't know how to position themselves within a pack, which is, you have to do it to kind of figure out how to slide around and put yourself in a winning position.
How long did it take you to kind of learn some of those tactics and kind of that first part you said? I think when you're doing a race, like you get like the stimulus, you get really nervous. So how long did it take you to kind of just learn how to calm down and recognize the right moves to follow versus this guy's just kind of throwing a big effort in that's going to come back in 2 minutes. Like I'm not going to worry about him.
Yeah, I think I had a pretty good understanding of it right away, but I also knew I had this pretty good sprint at the time. So I could manage a lot of situations where it was like, oh, if I just make it close to the line in touching distance, it's okay. But then kind of I got to harder races as a junior for sure, where the positioning became much more key as everybody else around me got better. And then I think it probably was like there's this race in Canada called Tour Labitibi. It's like way up usually it's in Amos, but it's way up in Quebec. And that was one of my first experiences, like an international, I did some international races before that, but a sprint based race. And so I felt like I was one of the fittest guys there, but I wasn't putting it together in the finals. And so we actually had Gord Fraser, who's a big, he's sometimes directs for Echelon now, but he's a big name in the sport, really knows his way around a finish. And I don't know if I was good and he knew it or if he was going to tell this to anybody, but he was just like, no, you're going to do it. Obviously you're the sprinter now. And so, talking to him a lot and, I think I didn't win a stage, but I think I won the field sprint for second the last day. And you could just kind of see every day chipping away at how to get there and how to position for the corners and just all these skills that you can't really read in a book usually.
How does that work with, so you said you kind of knew you had a pretty strong sprint and that kind of became your kind of go-to on a team, a lot of people that watch the tour, they don't understand that everybody has a different role on the team that they play. How are those kind of decided, like by the directors? Do they just look at everybody and go, okay, you are going to be the sprinter. You're really the climber. You're like, how do they kind of sort through that?
Yeah, usually it's pretty clear. I do want to say in professional racing, I'm definitely not a sprinter. My sprint is okay. And it's an okay sprint. And it doesn't get any worse. So if the race is really hard, it becomes a good sprint. But in general, in some of its body type, like I'm just very lanky. And so if I stand up, I kind of become a giraffe in a wind sail very quickly. So if it's like a slow speed sprint out of a corner and everybody's tired, I'm good. And then usually there's someone who's a lot more aerodynamic and a lot more punchy than me that I'm sprinting for in most professional settings. But yeah, we discuss it on the bus, and then it's not necessarily set in stone. It's usually, okay, usually the sprinter is pretty clear. It's this guy can sprint the fastest, and then there's kind of 3 or 4 guys shuffling around. And a lot of times there becomes a relationship between like the sprinter and his last lead out man, where he becomes very confident in him and he wants that last guy to be his last guy. And then the other positions are a little more mobile and can depend on just how the race is playing out.
How much does ego play into that? So someone's like, I want to be the guy versus being, no, I'm going to kind of go into whatever I'm told to do. Like, I feel like with cycling, especially the higher you get in level, like there's got to be a lot of ego.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to advocate for yourself if you're not performing. So if you say you're going to do it and you don't do it, then pretty quickly you lose that first chair. I think the funny thing about sprinters is a lot of them they never do anything wrong. That's a common thing in sprinters is you guys didn't do it right.
Really?
Which is
Okay.
when you have a sprinter that sometimes like sprinting with Scott McGill, he'll say, "Yeah, it was pretty good. I got third." I can really respect that. There's that's often like a climber doesn't really get excuses. He can't do the watts per kilo, but a sprinter can always find an excuse.
What's your favorite excuse you've ever heard from a sprinter? Like after a race, do you remember?
Oh,
one?
I just boxed in. I didn't have my gels. I didn't, we went this way. At kilometer 4, I had a flat tire. It can go on.
Wait, kilometer 4 in the race? Or
Yeah. Yeah. 2 hours ago, I had a flat tire. So no, but sometimes it can feel like that. Especially, doing a lead out it's chaotic. It rarely goes to plan. So there is always stuff that goes wrong, and a good sprinter can deal with stuff going wrong.
Yeah. So I'm curious about this. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was, as a pro, you're obviously doing a lot of different types of racing, and it seems like you've done crits, you've also done long road races, you were just in France doing like tour stages. So, requiring different types of like structured training, like what workouts do you do that you feel gives you success in all of these different types of races? Because to really make yourself, I guess the question is like, make yourself more well-rounded as a racer in and of itself. Like you're not just doing crits throughout the entire year.
Yeah, so do a lot of just like long base rides are always going to help. You get, you just get that base, you get that endurance, you get the capillary density. So just the ability to carry oxygen increases. So it's like, that's a good all around. This is always going to help.
So just long zone 2 is what you're talking
yeah.
about? Okay.
Yeah. So that's hard to skip. Maybe if somebody was a pure crit racer, they could cut that down significantly. But if you're going to do any kind of road race, that's hard to avoid. You're going to have to pedal your bike quite a bit. And then usually I would do, so like roughly in a week, I would do 1 day of tempo. So not threshold, but maybe 90%, and try and stack. Actually, as I've gotten older, I've done more and more time in that zone. So like you might do 60 or 90 minutes in that zone in a 3 or 4 hour ride, which is quite a lot. But because it's not true threshold, it's not all out. You can do it repeatedly, and you can do it week in, week out without fatiguing yourself to a level where you're not going to get that adaptation. And then I would also do 1 day that is like true VO2, true hard 5 and 2 minute efforts. Usually I would do some combination of 5x5 and then 5x2 at pretty race intensity wattages for the 5x2s. Just because that's what bike racing is a lot of the time. And then also doing a day with some proper 30-30s, or that I don't necessarily love. I don't enjoy those as much. I like to kind of get.
Nobody loves doing 30-30s.
Yeah. I like to kind of find my zone and stay there. But I think those kind of efforts are really good. So a lot of times when I'm coaching people, we'll do something where it's a combination of those two. So you might do 2 30-30s into an 8-minute tempo directly to kind of simulate the race and simulate. A lot of the times it is quite a hard start into the climbs, or following an effort and then trying to make the break. So trying to be realistic with what you would see in a race.
Okay, so I kind of want to ask a follow-up question to that then. So a lot of racing, there are skills you develop that you can't train for, as far as like, no matter what amount of intervals you do, it's not going to make you better at certain bike handling or just racing type skills. Are there anything that you've kind of found success in over the years to just get you good at racing skills outside of interval type work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for sure you can work on one of the things I try to tell people is like you want to be coasting as much as possible in any bike race. Like coasting is the best. You don't have to do any watts. And so one of my running jokes is like you're only ever 8 pedal strokes from the head of the field if you do it right. So a lot of times there's this magic spot in most descents where if you kind of get over the crest and then you get up to speed and then you find a little pocket and you do 8 hard pedal strokes and then you tuck. You can't super tuck anymore, which I miss, but you do an on saddle legal tuck as much as you can, and it's shocking how you can pass 50 people with 8 pedal strokes. And that's a skill. It's kind of one of those things. It's like walking a tightrope. You just do it over and over, and the corrections get smaller and smaller and smaller until you're really using momentum frequently. Is one of the biggest things I've noticed, just out of necessity, because sometimes these races are just so hard. Like you have to save everything, and then when they're not that hard, and you're going for the win, and it's in the pocket, then it's just more watts that you save all day.
Oh man, I love that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: how long did it take you to get tactically good at racing?
It depends. I think sort of the American racing was often not too tactically challenging because it was a lot of times like, okay, the break is going to go, a team will control, and then there'll be a sprint. So the sprints a lot of times were hard, or they're high power and they're hard, but there was less chop probably leading in, so there would be fewer hard efforts leading in. It would be mostly steady until the final. Where now some of these races are just hard all day and consistently, over threshold, really, really changing.
When you say now, like, are you talking in America or in Europe?
Yeah, in Europe,
Okay.
for sure. In Europe, much more dynamic, probably. And so then you kind of have to be a little more switched on and knowing what's going to happen and kind of predicting what's going to happen. And then also sometimes when you're racing a bunch of World Tour teams, the tactic is to survive. Then it becomes quite simple. It's just you just hold on. But there were definitely a few years in Europe where I got really good at getting in the breaks, because that's, in my opinion, that's kind of the most improvable skill. Your watts per kilo, you can lose weight, and that's really hard to do. Or you can be a sprinter and be a little crazy, and but your top end, 10, 20 second power is kind of genetically set a little bit. You're not gonna improve that by 10% for sure. And so you could improve your fitness enough that you were able to be breathing and still not on the limit in the start of the races, and then you could kind of see the dynamic of the race. So I would pretty much look for a wall. You would look for the wall starting to form. You see 2 or 3 teams start to spread, and you could shoot up the grass on one side, and you would find these moments where you can see it's going to lull, and then I would try and blast across. Was usually my tactic. Sometimes you could go just straight on the back of the motor. When the flag drops at K0, you could just go. And if you went really hard, they might let you go, which worked about 10 to 20% of the time. And then when it was really hard, then you can't do it with a hammer. You got to kind of do it with a scalpel a little bit. And then, you have to have the 20-second power to get across, but knowing when to use it was much more important than the actual raw wattage.
That's fascinating. We've talked about the importance of breakaways, and something as new racers we've discovered how obviously that is the race, right? So if you're in the breakaway or if you're not in the breakaway, that is the race. And so what I hear you saying is that your top end, 20 to 10 to 20 second power is a little bit more genetically set, but that is something that tactically you can improve on to be able to get into some of those breakaways where you can practice that in training.
Yeah, for sure. And just using the same thing with momentum. It's like you're never going to get into the break if you attack first wheel. So you got to kind of charge the wheel in front of you from behind a bit, from 10, 20 wheels back, and get that head of steam. So when you're going by, you got to have 5-10K an hour on the guy that's on the front, so that you can actually pull out a gap. Because you can't do it by just pedaling hard, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love that.
No, that's super helpful. How do you practice that outside of racing? Because obviously that's something that you have to just do a lot in racing, but how do you train that? Like, do you just go on really fast group rides and I'm just going to sprint on these guys and see what happens? Or do you find a way to train that?
I think if you can find a group ride, like we have a shop ride from the Bike Zoo in Knoxville that has like one race section that's about 18 minutes. So, and there used to be another one on like Tuesday, Thursday nights. So you could actually, especially a group ride with a defined race section, that's 5 or 10K, is pretty fun to get to experiment there and try different things, especially when I was 15, 16, 17, I was doing 3 group rides a week. And so I could play with a lot of different things and play with how to move and when to accelerate. But yeah, it's kind of a thing you have to kind of do it around other people, for sure.
Okay. We've got a group ride Tuesday Night Worlds. It's pretty kind of racy. And I think that's one thing that it's logistically a nightmare for me to attend with kiddos and, the current season of life. But it is one of those things that I would love to be able to get to do more of, because you can practice more of those race type of situations. And exactly to your point. So let me ask you this. So in terms of how you approach a season, when you feel stuck or like, let's say that progress has stalled, what do you typically do?
A lot of times the first thing, like if I had a client that felt like they stalled out, the first thing I would look at doing is taking a little breather. Like sometimes it can feel like you're just in the Chinese finger, you're pulling
Yeah.
too hard. You're trying everything, and maybe you're a little burnout. But then also it's important to look at what's the limiter in the racing. And then a lot of times the solution, like you have to let that sink in, or let those adaptations sink in. So maybe, for example, a lot of times I would start the season in Belgium and the limiter is always, 30-second, 1 minute power. So if you get dropped on Saturday and Sunday, and then you go out and try and improve that on Wednesday, and then you go back Saturday, Sunday, it doesn't really work out. So sometimes you have to like weather the storm a bit and keep trying. The biggest thing to do is to keep finishing as much as possible. That seemed to be a slippery slope as soon as you started DNFing races, because you've eaten for the race, you've tapered for the race, and then if you make it 80K into a 180K race, and you do that 3 or 4 times, all of a sudden you've lost a lot of fitness because you haven't. It's hard to make up that. Even mentally, it's hard to go out and train the next day hard. So that's one thing, is just trying to like get through all those things. Even maybe if the racing isn't going your way, you want to stick it out a little bit, and then know when to stop sticking it out and when to kind of take a little breather and reset.
I'm just trying to figure out how to follow. I feel like what you're kind of alluding to is just like a mental fortitude. Like this, I can't give up no matter what.
Yeah, I think one of the best things that can happen is you get really frustrated. You get dropped so many times in a race until you just say, I won't get dropped, or you get 18th place because you can't. But this was me. I mean, I got 18th place in sprints a lot of times, and then you don't want to get 18th place anymore.
Yeah.
And so then you have to look at what are the factors that are keeping me from there. Is it I don't know how to position? Is it I'm not fit enough? Do I not have enough? I can't do enough time at VO2, I need to improve that. I can't do the 30-second power. I need to improve that. And then once you figure it out, it's not like you can change it overnight, and then you have to kind of stick it out. Like one thing I like to tell people is like, if anything's worth doing, it's worth doing 8 times. Like if you're going to do a session, if you're going to say, I'm going to be good at TTs this year, I want to improve at my TT. You're not going to get better if you do 3 TT rides. You have to kind of stick it out and sometimes stick to a plan that's unpleasant.
Do you think that, because I'm really curious about this, because this is something I've certainly discovered about myself, where going into this, where it's like mostly just recreational riding, but now that we're racing, mental fitness and mental toughness plays a major factor. And I've noticed that you've talked about the thirds of it in terms of the mindset. When you coach others, walk me through a little bit of like how you coach people from a mental mindset when you're getting into racing. Like if you've got a newer racer or somebody that's maybe done a little bit of racing but maybe hasn't raced a ton, tell me a little bit about that, like mental side of fitness.
Yeah, a lot of it I like to call just cortisol management. So just knowing which things are worth stressing about. Because if you're stressed about your Tuesday workout and your Thursday workout, and then you have a race on Saturday, you might just be burnt out by the time you get there. So I try to make like the training for myself and for athletes, like even though it might be hard training, I try to make it like as low stress as possible. Like I don't like to put a lot of stakes on, like, we're not doing power testing all the time. We're not doing maximal efforts all the time, so that you can kind of keep that in reserve. One of my old coaches used to call it like, how many times can you go to the well? Like eventually it's going to go dry. So I think the first part is like trying to keep the stress in appropriate levels. And then I think it's interesting to know, like, for different people, they need different level of stress, you know? Like I kind of sometimes describe it as like how much water is in the pool. Like, so the like psych term would be like eustress and distress. Like eustress is positive stress and distress is when it's too much. Um, and so some people, you know, they might need to swim in 6 feet of water, and some people might need to swim in 4 feet of water. So everybody has their level where they're most productive and they can float and everything is good. And some people can operate, you know, they can't operate without a high level of stress. If they're not, you know, kind of pinging and running around, they don't perform. And then there's some people that need it to be very chill and, you know, save all their stress for the race. And it's super personal, and it's hard to figure out, and you kind of have to find your own limits a little bit.
How do you feel like you kind of fall on that spectrum of what you described, like for yourself?
Yeah, a little bit in the middle. Yeah, I like to save as much as possible stress for the race. So I try to keep my stress low, but naturally I'll figure out how to stress myself out. So it's like I tend towards higher stress, and so I work to keep it a bit lower. And that's for me what works.
How do you continue to make progress as you age?
I mean, there's always new information about training out there. And so like when I was, I mean, we were in the dark ages. We didn't know, we didn't know anything. And that's the thing. We were still pretty good, sort of, but the raw power is going up all the time. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do now. Like, and the funny thing is, like, new things are really fun when they're new and you're doing them and you're getting better, and then they're really not fun when everybody figures it out. Like it's really fun when like you're eating 120 grams of carbs and nobody else is. You're like, wow, biking is so easy, this is awesome. Or when you've done the heats, I remember, like, that's an example, like 2022, I was just slightly ahead of the curb on the like high carb on the bike, and I was like, wow, this biking stuff is not that bad. And then by 23, everybody knew, and everybody was faster, and it was not fun anymore. The same kind of like, I remember doing the heat suit prep into Redlands in 24 and feeling like it made a big difference on some of the first days when it was really hot. And now everybody would do that, you know? But there are all these things. It's like, it's pretty hard to argue with the heat prep. It works. It's pretty hard to argue with the high carb. It works. And so there's a lot of things that are constantly coming out in training methods and aerodynamics, you know, and the equipment's getting really, really good. And so it's like, you can't be stuck in what you were doing in 2009, for sure, you have to kind of keep adapting.
Okay, so kind of on that then, as you said, everything keeps coming out, and the Cat 5 and 4 and 3 guys, they're trying all the stuff. I've seen guys online that wear like painter suits and hop on their trainer in the basement, and then like the high carb stuff. What would you say? What's something that you would say to like a Cat 4 or Cat 5 racer? Like one piece of advice that you would say to them to help them jump to the next level?
I think what is probably being neglected the most right now is like a good hard group ride, and getting that race sim kind of in a less stressful setting where you can actually process it, and you can ask somebody if you're doing it right or wrong, um, and you can kind of get feedback in real time. And I think that is probably the thing we're missing, because a lot of the other stuff is so individual, and it's pretty easy to read the literature and kind of figure it out. It's not rocket science, but riding your bike really fast around other people is pretty hard.
Do you think like COVID and the rise of Zwift have kind of could be is the reason for that?
Yeah, a little bit. I think just everybody got more, at least in the pro peloton, it seemed to get much more serious after COVID. Because I remember I started racing in Europe with Rally at the beginning of 2020 and did maybe 10 or 12 days and felt like I was, not great, but pretty good. And then by October, when we went back, I was not good. And it took me 2 years, 18 months to feel like I was back where I started, because the level just has gotten really high. Everybody's really dedicated. Everybody does their homework. Everybody tries hard and does their training. And a lot of the young guys, it's like the young guys, they know if they can pop off at Olympia's tour, that's a world tour contract almost guaranteed. And so the stakes are really high, and the stakes are high, immediately, for these young guys.
Okay, I do have another follow-up question to that. So we had our coach on last week, and this question kind of came up. We were talking about how, the pro peloton seems to be getting, like you said, a lot younger. And we were talking how Geraint Thomas is retiring and how he's had 16, 17 years in the peloton. With all these young guys coming up doing all this marginal stuff now to just one up each other, do you think that that's super sustainable? Like, do you think we're going to start to see pros retiring at younger ages than what we've seen in the past?
Yeah, probably. I would think, yeah, early 30s is probably going to become more the norm. I mean, I feel like a lot of guys used to go till 35, 38, and now that would be kind of an exception. Yeah, it's just if you're locked in from 16, 17 years old, it's hard, and it's I mean, the good thing is those guys seem to make a lot of money, so yeah. I think it's a great time to be a super talented young cyclist. But yeah, I think it's almost like the guys in the middle, like the superstars have it really good, and then the guys in the middle are just punching bags a little bit. And so, yeah, then it gets hard to do that level of preparation, that level of sacrifice. And then there's some super talents that just blow you out of the water every day.
Okay, so changing gears a little bit, I think it's really interesting to get into racing abroad because, again, most people never will get that opportunity. And so you've raced in France even just recently. And tell me about, what is that experience like compared to racing in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's way more chaotic. One of the biggest things is just the infrastructure is a lot different. There's so much road furniture and smaller road that's probably the biggest thing. Is there's just stuff everywhere that's hard and will hurt you. It's like it's actually it grates on your nerves because there's these motos that are beeping all the time. The motos are leapfrogging the race at all times. So there's always 10 motorcycles beeping by you to get to the next thing to market, and they don't get to all of them. So It is definitely scary. You're going really fast, and you might hit a traffic island at any moment. So it does feel like that part feels way more stressful than like doing a race on a big boulevard, and you know where all the turns are, and it's nothing to worry about really.
Yeah.
Um, and just the intensity might be a little bit higher of like how tight guys are willing to squeeze for every position.
Of all the places you've ridden, what's what sticks out to you as the most beautiful place?
Like the mecca of
Yeah.
cycling. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me it's Norway. I did
Oh.
Arctic race and I did tour of Norway a couple times, and like there's some okay for one thing it's either a city or there's not a lot of sprawl. There's city or nature for the most part in my experience. So we did a lot of really cool races that you're going along waterfalls and you go through these big tunnels. Like the tunnels were such a thing that we would have to switch from using a GPX file to a TCX file because something is different. The TCX will autocorrect the distance after you exit a tunnel and you lose GPS. So like you might be in tunnels for 5 or 6K
Wow.
in a stage, so that you actually do need to have the correct file or you won't know how far in you are. There's also a thing like I definitely had some teammates from Norway, and I showed up and they're like, "Oh, don't worry, you can't crash here. This road is grippier in the dry than a Spanish, or in the wet than a Spanish road is in the dry," and it's true. There's
Interesting.
definitely some compounds in the road. Like a lot of European roads are like Portugal, Spain. I don't know what compounds are in the tarmac, but they seem to keep a lot of oil on top and they keep a lot of moss on top. Where Norway, I think it's just wet so much. They've developed some kind of system. I don't know what it is, but the road's never going to be mossy. It can be pouring rain and you can't slide out, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
So that was always fun for me to, you can rip some descents and you always seem to have a cool view around the corner.
That's awesome.
Oh man, I love that. So, is there a moment like from your time in Norway that really sticks out to you as like this is my favorite memory, or is it somewhere else in Europe?
Yeah, there's one kind of funny. There's one kind of funny. I was like going for a KOM, and I kind of nicely backed off, to take a run at him up this hill, and and then I shifted, and the gear. It was the loudest shift I've ever had in my life. And then I watched each of the six guys in front of me turn around as I was 500 or 600 meters from the line, and I was like, "Oh, I guess, gotta do it." There's nothing else to do, and I got it, but it was ugly. It was really hard.
I love that.
That's awesome. What is for you, especially, you do a lot of traveling to Europe. You do a lot of, you mentioned Canada. You're in the U.S. a lot. What does a typical race season look like for you from, say, January through? I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't think racing's going through December, so like kind of late fall.
Yeah, so when I was fully in Europe, it would probably you'd go to training camp beginning of January, and then you'd start racing in February, and then it would be we were a little bit of an exception because as an American team, we would kind of get 4 to 6 weeks at home for nationals, but then it would go pretty full bore till early mid October, and now I think it's a bit pushed back. So we would start. I think next year we're going to start kind of early March, and so the season will be a bit more condensed, which I like. I like to have kind of more time to get ready, and then we'll race through, I guess, mid September.
When you show up to team training camp, how fit are you versus, oh man, I got some ways to go here.
Yeah, there's nobody that shows up unfit to training camp
Okay.
anymore, for sure. Unless they're coming off an injury or something, everybody shows up at very, very close to their peak.
Okay. So then for those colder months before January, I mean, January is still cold, but what are you doing to kind of get ready for that season?
Yeah, luckily I live in Knoxville, so there's maybe 3 weeks total that you can't ride outside. spread over the winter. 15, 20 days that you can't ride outside. So I can do most of my training outside, and I try to do roughly 1 day a week mountain biking or gravel biking,
Okay.
just to mix it up. And then, yeah, I've been lucky lately with a lot of group rides. I ride with my friend Chris a lot. There's a good Sunday ride. There's a good Saturday ride. Um, so I've definitely done much more group riding in the last 2 years or so. That keeps it pretty easy. It's pretty easy to tick off 5 or 6 hours on a Sunday if you're chatting the whole way. And then usually it would be like 2 days a week intensity and the rest just base.
When you're doing these kind of preseason group rides, are you just, because you're a pro, and you're probably not everybody you ride with is a pro. So are you just kind of chilling, or are you like, I'm going full gas here, and these guys are gonna get a workout, and I'm just gonna like, what does that look like?
Yeah, no. If I wanted to go hard, I would usually um, ride by myself,
Okay.
or ride with one other person that I knew could handle it. But usually on the group ride, it's just cruising along.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just getting the time, getting the miles in.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was curious about that too because yeah, if we showed up in a group ride with you, it would be like, "Hey, Stephen's gonna do some gonna do some race simulations or do some intervals." We could not hang. Like there, it'd be like, "Hey, man, I'll see you at the coffee shop or something later on." But yeah, there's no way. So that makes a lot of sense. But
Yeah, usually my role is trying to navigate the GPX that I don't ever make the route. I just guide the route. So I'm trying to make sure we go the right way, and I'm moderately successful.
I love it.
I know it's so our mutual friend Chris. Every year, my family we come down to Gatlinburg for a week in July, and sometimes I've gotten to ride with Chris. And this year he was like, "You should come down and ride with me and Steve." And I was like, I don't know if I can." Like I was super intimidated. It didn't work out either way because the second half of my trip, I was in bed all week, like sick. The second half of vacation, but it was definitely like an intimidating invite. Like,
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, biking is so much drafting that, like,
yeah,
if you sit in some people like to call it the chariot. If you sit third wheel, kind of in between the two guys, you can do a lot of stuff. You can sit on for a lot.
I went with him last year. He took me on a lot. He took me up. Oh shoot, what's the mountain down there? The big Bluff Mountain.
Bluff Mountain.
He took me
Yeah.
up Bluff Mountain,
Oh yeah.
and this like 2 hour training ride. Like we weren't going hard, but I was like, this is the hardest, just chill ride I've ever done. Not because like the pace was so pushed, but I was like, it was like every 10 minutes we were doing like a 15% climb. And
Oh
I was
yeah.
like, holy, like it is steep
Oh,
down
yeah.
there. Like it is some good climbing.
Yeah, it's. I think it's the best place in the U.S. to train for sure.
Okay, let me ask you this. What is your favorite type of race? Is it crit? Is it road? Stage race? And why?
Yeah, I like the stage racing just to kind of get in the rhythm. It's like, well, if you're gonna have to spend 2 days getting to the race and 2 days getting home from you might as well get 5 or 6 or 7 days in. And then I think it's just fun to like, you kind of just you kind of get into the stage race like hypnosis where you're just going through the motions, but it's pretty fun, and you get tired and you get a little loopy, and I really enjoy that when you're just you're all in the back of a car kind of goofing off.
What's the longest stage race you've done? Like how many stages?
I think I've done 3 races that were 10 days.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
I
That's a
can't
lot.
imagine, like when you describe that fog, like I just can't imagine what that's like.
Yeah, the most recent 2 I did were Portugal, which is going on right now. It's a crazy race. It's the craziest race. They call it, what do the Portuguese call it? La Grandissima. It's it's probably the closest thing you can do to a Grand Tour as a continental rider, where it's really, really, really hard, and it's really hot. It's like usually one of the hottest races on record, well over 100 every day.
Oh,
Um, and it just brings you to your knees. Like no matter how good you are, you get sick at some point. You fight the broom wagon. get up these climbs. I mean, at one point I was going like last year, and I was like, I wonder how much longer this climb is. I feel like we've been climbing for like 5K. Let me just flick over, and it said 25K to go. And that was the second climb. That wasn't, it was the second climb. There was another like 2 to go.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
my Lord. What are you thinking mentally in that moment? Like, is that, okay. Yeah. Take me to your headspace in that moment.
Yeah. That one was pretty funny because you could just tell like everybody was hurting for sure, but but everyone is also so dull that nobody could actually break the race. And so we were going up this climb, and I was like, I kind of need water. I could really use some water. And we kept not getting water until I was like, I need water. And that's when Tyler Stites was on the team, and he was like, "Oh, I can go get some water." Just completely chill, and I was absolutely on my limit. And he just came back. He went back to the car, got 8 bottles, came up, just chill as can be. And I was like, "Oh, we are playing 2 different sports right now. It should not be this easy for you." And then I saw right after that there was like our car finally stopped and was on the side of the road, and I just bodied somebody to get my bottle. And I was like, "Sorry, man, I actually needed that, or I would die."
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Would you say that's like the most you've been like at your limit in a race where you're like, I am on the edge of like just not even finishing this race?
Yeah. Somehow both years I've done that race, it was tooth and nail, grinding to get around.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. The first time I did it, we had these Portuguese Swannies, and they were just like, this is not the race for you, Steve. why are you here? This is not good race for you. And he kept telling me, when I did this race as a rider, I was 5'6". You understand? I was 5'6" kilos. And I was like, yeah, that's really small, man. I'm not 5'6" kilos. Oh, you will suffer here. That's what they say. They say, "Oh, you will suffer. You will suffer."
I mean, that's got to be encouraging, right? You're like, thanks so much.
Yeah, he gave me a little pep talk. He said, "Hey, when I was rider, when I got hungry, I take the bike 1 hour until I was not hungry anymore." I was just like, "Okay, dude, cool. Yeah, sick.
Good for you, man. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Thanks,
it's funny, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love Portugal's just a fun country. It's kind of, I describe it as Spain, but more it's like Spain but more energy. There's Spain is a little tranquilo. It's a little, let's take a little nap at 2. The Portuguese they just have so much vigor and so much enthusiasm. It's really fun.
Now, do you guys, even as a team, you guys are racing all the time, but like even when you're traveling and racing in Europe, do you guys ever take a couple of days after the race to just, hey, if you can hang out here, kind of enjoy a little bit? Like when you're in France after you guys' race, do you have a day or two to be able to enjoy France at all, like in any capacity?
Pretty rarely. This year we went to Mont Saint Michel in France, which was pretty cool. Just like a big castle on an island that the tide comes up and makes it inaccessible. So it's a pretty big, like, historic monument. One year on rally, we went to the Alhambra, which is in Spain, which is like one of the first cities on a hill, where they figured out how to pipe water up, so it made it really defensible. They were one of the first people to figure that out, so that was pretty cool. And those 2 are about the extent of the culture days that we have. Usually it's pretty much in and out.
I know. I feel like the racing that Josh and I have done this year, we've been like, we leave the race, we're like, man, it'd be so cool to go back there and just ride our bikes, like actually get to enjoy where we were versus like when you're in the race, you're not looking at anything but what's happening on the road in front of you. And so we've missed like we did, I know you've rode this area a lot. We came down for the Cherahalla Challenge. And we rode the Skyway, and we're like, and I'm thinking, this would be so fun to not be like at my limit, killing myself right now, and to just enjoy.
Yeah.
Because the views up there and the descent is just amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But when
Best
you're
ride in
when
the
you're
world.
in it, you're like, I don't know. I don't even know where I am right now. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
all right, I want to ask a couple questions, kind of like life behind the scenes of a Conti Pro. So, what's something about being a U.S. Conti Pro that a lot of people don't know or don't realize?
Let's see. Yeah, the thing is, it's kind of a slightly lower level of racing, but everybody is working extremely hard and trying very, very hard. Um, so yeah, that's the kind of an interesting thing with cycling, where like each level, like a really good pro conti rider is a really good pro conti rider would be better than a lot of world tour riders, and a really good continental rider would be better than quite a few pro conti riders. But um, there can be a super high level, and then it's kind of fun. At this level, you get to do some races where you're the man and you're really good, and you do some local races and get to dunk on everybody, and then you do some races that are kind of a Redlands type race where if everything goes right, the team can win, and then we do some races that are very, very challenging, and everything really has to go right to succeed. Um, so it's kind of fun to do a mix of everything, which is something I enjoy.
Do you guys do? Is Legion a U.S. Conti team?
I believe they have been in the past and are not currently.
Okay, so were they like a rival at any point for you guys, or were they the team to beat? Because I mean, they were getting a lot of like coverage, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily the best team.
I think they were really dominant in the crits for quite a few years. But Echelon, that's not really the focus. The focus would be more on road racing. So we didn't have a ton of overlap.
Okay, okay. Let me ask you this: like, how do the and you can go into this as much or as little as you're comfortable with. How do the pros, like the contracts work? Like for a Conti Pro, is that like you're getting a contract that is good enough to support you, or is it like a lot of the Conti guys are like side like Uber drivers or work in an office or like have another job to kind of like pay for bills or expenses?
Yeah, I think probably maybe some of the younger guys, can, if they're keeping their expenses to a minimum, can do it full time as a Connie rider. And then as you get older and you kind of have more stuff going on, most people are doing some other work for sure.
So for you, like what does that look like?
Mostly coaching,
Okay. Okay.
and then kind of hopefully getting into some substitute teaching to kind of get ready for a post cycling career is
Okay.
my hope.
Okay. Is that like when you say like is that like post cycling? Like is that you think you want to go into teaching?
That's what I'm trying to find out. Yes, I'm
Okay.
doing a little. I want to do a little trial run.
Okay, that's a great like I'm actually a teacher, so like that's a really
Oh,
good
nice.
that's a great way to kind of get a foot in the door. Do you have like in your mind like high school, middle school, or subject or that you're kind of thinking?
Yeah, probably like middle or elementary school. Like I'm pretty good with young kids for some reason.
Okay.
A little scared of high schoolers. They'll probably bully me, but I've heard that kids of every age can bully you. So um, we'll see. I kind of want to dip my toe in that pool a little bit and see how that goes.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And then for you, you mentioned coaching. What does that look like as far as like, how do you manage like, X load or X amount of clients while you're still trying to do your own full-time racing and training?
Part of it is like I feel like really acquainted with the challenges that they're going through. Like because I've kind of I like to say I've been good, bad, and everything in between in cycling. So I feel like I have a good amount of experience, which means for most scenarios I can kind of have some frame of reference to be helpful, which I think is good. So it's sometimes not like crazy time intensive. It's just like you have to actually be thinking and really switched on to paying attention to what can help them.
I'm curious about this, and this is so. Let me ask you this: do you still get nervous before big races? Like, how do you deal with nerves?
Yeah, I still get nervous before like nationals. That'd probably be about it. Um, and
Why
kind of,
nationals?
I
What
mean,
is?
it's just there's just more, as a it's the biggest race we do all year. There's the most on the line. I've won it once. There was another time I came pretty close in the road race. Um, and it's just, that means a lot. That jersey meant a lot to me, and it was a really big honor to get to wear it for a year and get to show it off. And that's like something fun to have on the resume on the Palmares.
Yeah.
And it's also like it's kind of the one event that everybody's there. The World Tour guys come back,
Yeah.
everybody shows up, and it's a little higher stakes.
But how do you deal
But
with the nerves? Like, I
yeah,
mean, so you don't get nervous for, like, and it makes sense. Obviously, you're racing all the time now, but it's like, and you've done it for so long. But just how do you deal with the nerves for a race like that?
yeah. Well, one thing is like I've raced super nervous for many years, and I've raced uh, sometimes super relaxed, and it doesn't seem to have any bearing on performance. So I try to remember that it's like, yeah, you can be nervous. It's not going to help. Uh, which is sometimes you just have to remember that it's like, yeah, this will go away when you go off the line. So
Yeah.
I've definitely done a lot of years of being super nervous in racing, and that's one thing I will say. You got to be careful. Like when I'm nervous before, I don't necessarily try to fight it. I just know it's part of the experience. But when I'm nervous in the race, or overthinking in the race, that can be super dangerous. And like then you have to kind of remind, like one of the tricks I play on myself is like, hey man, we can be super upset about this at the hotel, like when you're not on your bike and you're out of danger. But so much of racing is like you have to be switched on and racing with your spinal cord and like making really quick decisions. And if your head's in the clouds thinking about it might be negative. It might be thinking about how you're going to be having to work at FedEx next year, or it may be thinking about, oh yeah, for sure I'm going to be in the World Tour next year. I mean, look at me, either one, is something that's taking you out of the race, and that's something I think I really had to learn through. I mean, I used to crash a lot because I couldn't lock in and couldn't focus. I might be thinking about you know 10 months down the road, and I'm going to do this and this. um, so that is one thing I try to really focus on. In the race, it's the time that you have to kind of you have to kind of uh, work with yourself and say like, hey man, we're gonna worry about the rest of this later. We need to do this now. And you can take a couple deep breaths. And I don't even strive for positive thinking in the race. You just try as much as possible to be neutral and just racing on instinct.
Yeah, I think one of the questions we were curious about was how do you handle travel, diet, staying fit while on the road, doing it all the time?
Yeah, definitely hard to keep everything perfect. So you kind of have to roll with the punches a little bit on the travel. Especially, I feel like just travel gets worse and worse. Like airlines get worse and worse with their running on tighter and tighter budgets. So once something goes wrong, it usually goes semi-catastrophically wrong. It's usually not like, oh, I'll get the next plane in 4 hours. It's I'll get the next plane in 2 days. Oftentimes, so that's super stressful. But then, yeah, it's like, oh, you're not going to eat perfect on the road. You're not going to do it. If you have to eat McDonald's, you have to eat McDonald's, and it's that stress management of just knowing where to put your bullets.
With all like the traveling and kind of going back to like the Conti Pro, what does like the team or the sponsors like? Do they pay for your travel? Like, do they, what are they like? You get a contract, but you're like some guys. Like, I also do coaching on the side. Like, what does the team kind of take care of for you? So you're like, okay, I can more focus on what I need to do.
Yeah. So at least this team, we keep. You wouldn't have to go into your pocket for anything. So you would have the bikes, all the equipment covered, and all the travel covered, all those kinds of expenses. The food to and from would be covered, and then yeah, it's pretty nice. Like we're in a good position where like you get an extra cassette or you get an extra chain, and you leave training camp with brake pads and bottom brackets and tires and everything you need. So you're not having to to dip into personal money too often.
How does that work with like mechanics? So like you live and train in Knoxville, you don't have a team mechanic there. So do you have a shop that you trust? Does the team flip the bill on that, or are you having to dip into your own pocket for just maintenance stuff that's kind of beyond what you're able to do? Or have you just learned how to do everything?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how to do everything. I have a really good shop, the Bike Zoo in Knoxville, and they pretty much take care of anything that I need. That's once it gets to like bearings or hydraulics or electronics, I pretty much am out of my depth. I can do most of the rest of it, but they really helped out, especially last year. I signed late, and so it was quicker to get all the equipment there and built than get it to get it to Iowa and get it built there and then ship it. So they kind of helped out. But for the most part, you would leave the training camp with a lot of spares. And then as the season goes, to like minimize shipping costs, for the most part, if you need something, you would tell the mechanic in advance and they would bring it to the next race. And so then you would just get it replaced or leave with whatever cassette, rotors, stuff like that you need. It also helps. We have like we're doing like cyclo wax on the chains. So that kind of increases the lifespan of the chain by 2 or 3 times, or the whole drivetrain. So that definitely cuts down on some disposables.
How many mechanics? So you do, let's say that the 10 stage race that you were talking about, how many mechanics will show up in support of the team for that race or a race like that?
Yeah. So we, I think, have one mechanic there, and then more of a bigger budget team, like a pro Conti team, would probably have 2 to 3.
So one mechanic is managing like what, 8 riders, bikes?
Yes, seven bikes, I think. Yeah, that's definitely a hard job.
And is he washing them every night and tuning them and getting them ready for the next
Oh
day?
yeah, oh
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Those guys, especially that race, tends to be pretty late in the day, so it can be in pretty long transfers. So that's probably the toughest race to do as a single mechanic.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
That's really challenging.
Yeah.
Gosh, that sounds miserable to me. Just like not, I mean, like
Yeah.
if you love wrenching, that sounds awesome. But
Right.
just the stress of like,
That would be extremely stressful.
you're functioning on such minimal sleep if you're going 7 bikes that late into the night.
Yeah, broken. If they break a bike, then that's a whole rebuild because you don't have like each rider doesn't have a specific spare like they would on kind of a bigger team. So yeah, they really have to step up, and we've been really lucky with some really good guys that are willing to do that, and that's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
How many bikes does like Echelon give each? Like, do you have just one bike that they give you and they spec you out with a lot of the extra equipment, or is it like, okay, we're going to give you a second frame just in case?
So basically, we get one complete road bike and one complete gravel bike,
Okay.
and then we just travel with that bike, which it's more the expense of getting everything everywhere that's the problem than like getting a second or third bike would not be that crazy from the sponsors perspective, but then you have to have someone to drive the bikes in the US and in Europe, and it just becomes like logistically it would require a ton of money to make that work. I mean, it's like you can't really go from like 1 to 2 bikes. It's like you kind of got to go from 1 to 3 bikes and all the staff and all the infrastructure. You got to have somewhere to put them. You got to have vehicles. It gets pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, I imagine it just being like a giant jigsaw puzzle that someone is just moving all the parts to make sure everything works properly. It's crazy to me.
One of the coolest parts is like I always love these racks that they have because so there's these cool bike racks like that you see in like the tour, and they're all like kind of, I think there's one main company, and then there's like there's one knockoff, but basically there's 2 companies that make all these custom racks that you see in the tour. But then we have like a portable one that's like a sea sucker system. So it breaks down into a golf bag. It's like a modular system. And then it has 8 or 10 suction cups. and it's so insane. Like it looks insane. It's a crazy system, but I think we have two of them, and it's like for this specific purpose of being able to attach it to a rental car, it's like an ingenious solution, and it's just absolutely bonkers that we do it. I mean, it's crazy.
I've seen stuff like that. It's the suction cup stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff. I remember it was a Visma commercial a couple tours ago, and they were showing that, and it was like, I think it was like Wout Van Aert in a sports car just going crazy on a track, and then it was the suction cup on with his bike on there. I'm like, that I can't confidently. I wouldn't just drive down the interstate with my bike on I don't know. Like I'm just like, oh man, that's crazy to me.
It's funny. It's I have like a personal little one that I've used a few times, and it's you don't believe it until until you've had to use it, and then you're like, wow, it's totally fine. But it might take a couple thousand miles of driving and checking on it, and then you just eventually you kind of figure it out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You got to apply it care. Like you have to, the step that people miss is you have to like really clean the roof and then like moisten the cup or it can't get good suction.
Yeah.
So if you don't do that, it would be sketchy. But like once you know how to apply it, it's really totally fine.
Well, let me ask you this. In terms of kind of more of the tech side of things, is there a piece of gear or tech that's made a noticeable difference in your performance?
I'll give you two answers. So one for performance, it's like kind of the ribbed material that you see on like a Defeat sock. So that material, I don't know the exact numbers, but basically like, you've got your standard aero sock that's like kind of an indented line. And the difference between a normal sock to that is the same as the difference between that to a Defeat sock with the external ribbing. So it saves quite a lot of watts, like another, 5 watts.
Oh, wow.
And then now we've got the Jackaroo suits, and they've added that material to the arms as well. So, like you see, Tade has it in the tour.
Ours. Because we have
part of okay.
I think it's that weave that we have.
That's kind of it's the raised ribs.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's that material it doesn't make any sense how fast it is, but that's a really fast material. So now to kind of double up, it works really good on kind of the vertical cylinders, so your calves and your arms.
Okay.
Does your team, do you get in like a wind tunnel and test this stuff out and positioning?
Yeah, so we went to the A2 wind tunnel in November in collaboration with Jackaroo with the new suits to confirm, and I think it's about 10 watts faster with the new suit.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's the thing is, so now we have that in the TT suit. And so we've sewn a lot of pockets into the TT suit to use it in road racing. And then next year they'll incorporate that fabric into the standard road race suit. Okay. So it would already have pockets, but then you kind of get the best of both worlds. That's
really cool to hear, like the collaboration of them actually taking what your guys' feedback is and implementing it into the future product. Yeah, it's a pretty cool company. I think the biggest thing is like the turnaround is they can make you a kit in 2 weeks, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. I don't even know how logistically that factory must be running at night or something. I don't know how they can do it. I don't think we want to know.
Yeah, I've tried to figure it out and I'm not sure.
Okay, well, let's transition to, as we kind of close out, some more lighthearted, fun questions. What's your go-to pre-race meal?
It's either pancakes or Dino Bites. So I don't know if you guys know Dino Bites.
No.
This is a Tyler Stites special. He used to be on the team. It's kind of like Fruity Pebbles, but you can get it with marshmallows as well. So it's just sugar.
I was like, it sounds familiar. Can you find this at any store?
Yeah, you can find it. It comes in like a quite large bag. Like in Walmart, I think you can buy like a 5-pound bag, maybe 3-pound bag.
I used to have those when I was a kid. Yeah. Like my mom would buy these massive, because my brother and I would go through cereal like crazy. So just a quick carb. Yeah, okay. It's super easy. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay.
Okay, so what is you've raced a lot of different places. What's the craziest thing you've seen in a race?
Oh yeah, so I was racing Tour de Mer or Tour of Namen. I think the Belgians have two different names for it. It's Namur or Namen. But it's a pretty big city with a citadel at the top. And we were doing the last day, and I was in the white jersey, and then there was the yellow jersey and the guy in the polka dots. And it was a pretty stressful day because it was raining and slick, and there'd already been a couple crashes. And I don't know what these guys started fighting about, but they started jabbering up a hill. And the guy in the polka dots was probably 180 pounds, and the guy in the yellow was probably 120.
Oh gosh.
And they were fighting, and the yellow jersey grabbed his helmet strap and pulled him in, and he kind of did like it was like a circular motion. He pulled him in and then popped him in the nose and broke his nose.
Oh my God.
And he was just bleeding out of his nose, and we're going up this climb in the rain. And I don't know why the big guy came up to me and he was like, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah, kind of got your ass kicked." And then he was like, "What are you going to do?" And I was like, "Nothing." Like, I don't even know what you said I don't know what you guys were talking about. That was pretty crazy. Yeah. And then I was like, "This is not my country. I'm sorry. I cannot help you. I cannot help you in the slightest. There's no one who can help you less than me right now."
Oh my gosh. That's
so then
amazing.
we completed the bike race, and I never heard anything about it.
Man, that is one of those where it probably takes you a minute to, just process what's happening. You're
Yeah.
just like, what,
Yeah, it's wild.
what am I watching here? Man. Okay. So let me ask you this. Who is the hardest rider you've ever gone toe to toe with?
Yeah. The joke on the team is Scott McGill, old school hardman bike racer, which is pretty apt because he just will suffer more than you. For seemingly no reason a lot of the time. But yeah, man, that guy can go pretty deep, pretty frequently to get around some bike races.
Okay. Let me ask you this. One last one here is, who is your favorite rider?
Favorite rider?
Yeah, could be current or of all time. Like,
I think it's Graham Aubrey. Most innovation. So he invented two positions to break the world hour record. So he did the egg, which is like kind of a skiing position. And then the UCI outlawed that. And then he did the Superman, which is like a fully extended TT bars. And then they outlawed that. But he broke the hour record in each of those. And then I think he also got I think he did the 4K world champs pursuit in the egg position and won. And then, yeah, there was some quote where I guess he attempted the hour record and failed. And then he realized he had the track for another 24 hours, and he did it the next day and got it. And they were like, "Well, how'd you do it?" He said, "I needed to put bread on the table." And I was like, "Oh, this is a hard man. This guy is built different."
That's awesome.
Yeah, just really. I mean, I think I really like these guys that are outside the mold, kind of specimens that do it their own way. Especially, in my career, I've seen a couple guys like Kyle Murphy's an example where it's like he won nationals, he won 2 stages of Portugal, he won quite a few races, and there cannot be a less prototypical bike racer, where everything that is normal for a bike racer, he does the opposite.
interesting. How so? Like, what do you mean?
Just the diet, the approach to the race. I mean, he looks horrible. His knees are going everywhere. The seat's too low. But somehow this guy is getting around and he's going fast. And he just guys that lock in what he always called it the strike zone. And he's like, my strike zone is a highway grade climb at altitude. And that's what I'm good at. And so I'm just going to be good at that. And, I really like those guys that are a little bit strange and can make it work for them.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, before we kind of wrap up, we always like to do a what's happening in cycling this week. Kind of we just base this on what articles and things pop up on our feeds. So this week on mine it was EF Education Easy Post parts with Rafa and picks ASOS as their clothing sponsor. You kind of mentioned a couple minutes ago clothing. you've been on a few different teams now, and all with various clothing brands. Do you notice a difference, maybe not just performance, but comfort as well, in some of the stuff at the top level?
Yeah, I think everybody does pretty good basic clothes now, and then maybe where you see the difference is like the rain gear. Um, and so sometimes the sponsor has good rain gear, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the team will go to a third party and purchase a specific, like a GABA. A lot of times teams would buy an unbranded GABA or cover up a GABA, because those kind of niche items are pretty hard to make. Like it would be pretty typical for a team to give you a Velato's like neoprene glove or something like that. So I'm sure there's some companies that are big and they can make every single piece, and then there's some companies that you got to supplement a little bit with the specialty items.
Do you feel like the bibs pretty much doesn't matter the brand, it's going to be pretty decent today? Or do you get in a pair and you're like, ooh, I'm not as comfortable in these as I've been in other brands? Or
Most of the bibs are pretty good. There's not a whole lot of innovation. Sometimes the jersey, I think the jersey, like just the different materials, like sometimes you can get the one that's like kind of got more of a weave to wick a little faster. Those are nice. And then, yeah, then the aerodynamics, the bibs, there's no real differences. But then, like I was saying, the Jackaroo stuff with the external ribbing is kind of, that stuff actually does make a noticeable difference. So just the kind of tops are a little bit more touch and go with what's good and what's not.
okay,
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah.
You coach. How can people find you? How can people get coached by you?
Yeah, just shoot me an email, bassettcoaching@gmail.com, and that's the easiest way to get in touch, and I'll get right back in touch.
I love it. Okay, and we're gonna link that in the show notes as well. So that's amazing. But we want to say thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been an absolute blast and an honor to have you on our show. So we definitely would love to have you on again in the future. But man, just thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, guys.
Yes, thank you. This has been awesome.
Okay, well, that is it for this week. We would love, of course, to hear your reactions to this. Please leave a comment below giving your thoughts. And be sure, if you haven't done so already, check out Instagram and TikTok for more great content. And until next time, we will see you guys.
See ya.